Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Kirtan London's Journey to Joy with your hosts, Madhva and Caitanya Cintamani.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you so much for those of you who have joined us live. Hopefully that means we'll be able to connect a little more. If you have any questions, any comments or thoughts on what we're discussing, this is a fantastic opportunity for us to go a little bit deeper into the amazing book, which we're looking at, the Bhagavad Gita, and doing it all together. So thank you for joining us. And we will start today's session, how we always do, with an invocation prayer, which is a prayer of calling for mercy and offering our gratitude to our teachers. So I'll hand it to Cintamani to kick that off, but me and Cintamani will chant it together.
Thank you, Madhva. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Beautiful. I want to get the comments up there.
All right. So, just a quick recap. If you were not with us last time, we had a wonderful discussion about the first half of chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. And basically, we discussed how Arjun, feeling very confused and disturbed, turns to Krishna for help. And in that moment, the relationship changes and they become, instead of equal friends, they become teacher and disciple, teacher and student. And we talked about how important it is to ask for help on the road to spiritual perfection and the importance of teachers and gurus in our lives. We also talked about Krishna's more or less first instruction, where he says that, there was never a time when you nor I or all these kings did not exist, neither will they ever cease to be. So he assures Arjun that, the soul is eternal. And we discussed how we are spirit. We got into reincarnation a little bit. And what else was there? We also talked about just how important it is to study the science of spirit, just as important as it is to study the science of matter. What was that? What did you say last time, Madhva? It was quite good.
Science is the study of matter, and the Bhagavad Gita is the study of what matters.
Yes, very nice. Yes. And I think that was most of it. Did I leave anything out?
No, that was a fabulous recap.
Thank you,
Cintamani. There's so much in this session as well. When I study or try to study prior to these podcasts, I get overwhelmed. I'm like, how on earth are we supposed to talk about all of this stuff in one podcast?
Hear you. Yeah, it's a lot to pack into a small amount of time, and every piece is just as important as all the other pieces, so you don't want to leave anything out. We're trying not to shortchange you guys, so
we'll
really
do our
want
best.
to...
We'll do our best. That's all we
Yes,
can do.
exactly. All right. So, continuing on with Krishna and his wonderful first few instructions. The chapter itself is called Contents of the Gita Summarized, and it's because Krishna kind of goes over the key points that he will be elaborating on later. And the first thing that he kind of gets into in this second half of the chapter is the three modes of material nature.
Okay, tell us more. Tell us more.
So, material nature, the author, Srila Prabhupada, he goes into, he talks a lot about material nature, and it can be quite a strange concept, but for us, it's a really sort of regular term. But material nature sort of pertains to everything that is matter, temporary, pertaining to things that may not necessarily be connected to anything spiritual. You know, everything is material until we've connected it to Krishna. So that's like material nature. It just means the world in its sort of dead form. And he splits this material nature into three modes, three different qualities or gradations. And at the bottom, he's got ignorance, which is, there's not many upsides to ignorance. It's quite, it's really the bottom of the barrel, you know. Literally, it doesn't mean the same thing that people normally take it to mean. If someone's ignorant, it generally is just like someone who can't see the truth or who isn't interested in bettering themselves. An ignorant person is basically someone would say a stupid person. But in context of Bhagavad Gita, sorry, in context of Bhagavad Gita, ignorant, Prabhupada says ignorant in a very special way. Have you ever heard him say ignorant? He's talking, in the lectures, you can hear him say ignorant, and he says ignorant. He doesn't say ignorant like how we do. And it's quite interesting. Someone made a point a long time ago to me that this means that an ignorant person is a person who ignores or neglects their spiritual identity and their spiritual needs.
Wow.
Because they basically don't know any better, or they
Wow.
refuse to accept the truth. So ignorant or ignorant. And the qualities or signs of someone in the mode of ignorance would be, laziness, sort of just apathy towards anything that's good for them, sloth, so like sleeping, uncleanliness. You might walk into a house and it's just dirty and it's grimy and dark, and that would be like a place of ignorance. So you can apply this quality to most things around you, like, oh, this place is in the mode of ignorance, then it will be dirty. This person is in the mode of ignorance, they'll be like just, in darkness. And then so, or food in the mode of ignorance, it might be like molded or stale or, bad for your health or things like that. So the idea is that you want to be in a higher level, at least of than ignorance, but I'll explain the other levels now. Did you have anything to add about ignorance?
I want to hear, I definitely have some thoughts on these three because they're just so interesting. But I think it would be nice to hear you finish about the three modes first.
Sure. Then as we go a little higher in the chain, we start to talk about passion. And passion actually has some upsides to it. For example, creativity is in the mode of passion. And, ambition, motivation, these kind of things are in the mode of passion. That drive to go after what you want, that's passion. But on the negative side, then there's anger, there's just being too hyped and too stressed out. And there's also, a place in the mode of passion will overstimulate you. For example, the mall, or like this. When I was thinking about the modes, I was thinking like a place that overstimulates would be like the set of CBBS, like, have you seen like
CBBS?
Yeah, like the little children's TV, and it's all like yellow and red, and you got these adults in their like yellow jumpers jumping around, and it's like a bit crazy. So
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
Have you not? Well, I'm old, so I haven't looked at it in many years, but the last time I looked at CBBS, it was like, woo! And it's just like over the top, So like a place like that, where everything is just like take, sensory overload, that would be mode of passion. But then there's also like the mall and things like that. And then in terms of food, it would be like spicy food that or like stimulants, so like coffee, energy drinks, things that just like get you pumped, like that's mode of passion. And then why are you laughing?
No, I was just thinking about, I have to admit, I occasionally drink coffee, and it does do that to me. It gets me like super energized.
Yeah, so that's mode of passion for you. And then the next level up, we're going up another step. That would be the mode of goodness. So, peace, love and light. Everything is white. Everything is lilac. Everything is, like a yoga studio. You come in and it's just like good music, smells nice. Everyone's wearing purple. I don't know, but it's just like, lilac. It's all very, very chill. Activities in the mode of goodness, like giving in charity, helping people, serving society, things that give you peace in your heart. It's a very good place to be. Good, obviously, because it's a mode of goodness, but then it's a safe place to be in the material world, the mode of goodness. But then some of the negative sides are, sometimes there can be like an element of like holier than thou, like, you judge people who are still in the mode of ignorance. They sleep till noon or whatever, and you woke up at 5 a.m. So you're like, look at that guy, so that's like a downside of the mode of goodness. You start to feel like you've made it, so then you might just become comfortable in that space. But there's another mode which is above all of that. But first, I want to hear your thoughts on the three modes.
Sure. That was a fantastic explanation of the three modes, by the way. So what's interesting, I feel like this is something that everyone should hear about, the three modes of material nature, because they make so much sense. And they start to make things that otherwise may not make sense. So, for example, even the times of the day are influenced by the modes. So the early hours of the morning are meant to be a mode of goodness. And that's why you see in many spiritual cultures, people wake up very early and do their spiritual practice during those hours. Even non-spiritualists, there are very many accomplished people in the secular world who accredit their success It's that spiritual ego. Hell yeah, Stella, we have to try and, anyway, if we are not humble, we will be humbled. So what to do?
It's a kind of pride. Yeah, for sure.
But so even secular, I remember hearing a nice quote by, what was his name? Oh, actually, he got into Buddhism late in his life anyway.
Oh, who's that?
I forget his name. Sundari will know. He made a movie called The Shift. Anyway, he quotes Rumi, who says that the early hours of the morning have secrets to tell you, something like that.
Oh, nice.
So wake up, don't go back to sleep. So the early hours of the morning, these are influenced by the mode of goodness. And then you get into and I noticed that if I wake up very early and I'm trying to do my spiritual practice, it's much easier in those early hours.
Right.
As soon as 8:30, 9 o'clock starts coming in,
yeah,
mode of passion is kicking in. I have to start my day. It's so hard for me to then sit down and focus and chant or meditate or do anything other than, okay, work, go, this, that. And then as you go in towards the nighttime hours, those are influenced by the modes of ignorance. So that's why, we have the saying, people are afraid of the dark, or you often see people who are at Wayne Dyer. Thank you, Sundari. The morning light has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Thank you.
Beautiful.
So late at night, it becomes a more fearful time. And we start to see that's where drug addicts and drunkards will be out freely on the streets and things like that. And you can feel it. It's a mode of ignorance or so like that. And it plays into every aspect of our life. You can do any activity. So we as humans are governed by these three modes, as well as the external surroundings working under their influences. And almost every aspect of this world is governed by those modes.
Mm-hmm. There's a really famous picture, right, with the three modes as sort of puppeteers, and everyone below is puppets being controlled.
Oh, yeah.
Every action is being filtered through these modes, and they're sort of calling the shots as puppeteers. This is my puppeteer motion. I don't know why.
So we're acting under those modes, and we can even we do everything under those modes, even to the extent of potentially doing a spiritual activity if we're very heavily in the mode of ignorance. And this is why we sometimes see misapplication of spiritual teachings. Mm-hmm. And then perhaps, like, for example, you might see in Islam, where you see what is considered today to be extremists. They've read a spiritual philosophy in the mode of ignorance. They've misunderstood it because they're seeing it through the lens of ignorance. We can do the same. We see men abusing women, or we see people doing ridiculous things because they'll read a spiritual statement through the mode of ignorance and then misunderstand it and misapply it in their lives. So it's really important, if we start to understand these three modes and how they work in the world around us and how they work within ourselves and what we can do to lift ourselves, because mode of goodness is a good place to be, but how we can lift ourselves even above that, that's where we want to go. So I'll pass it back to you to talk to us about that.
Some great points there. Thank you. Yeah, the highest mode then would be the mode of transcendence, or that's the English. I was going to say the Sanskrit, and I said the English instead. So mode of transcendence, or Vishuddha Sattva. Sattva, everybody knows Sattva is goodness. And then there's above that your transcendence. And what that means is that we operate on the level of whatever is required in the service of the divine Krishna, and any of those actions which have been requested by him, ordered by him, they all go into this category of the highest mode, because we're acting under his orders. Therefore, it is a how to say, therefore it is,
Transcendental activity.
yes, thank you, transcendental activity. And basically that's where you want to be, because you can perform any action. For example, the action of Arjuna, who has to now go and basically kill all of his family members, that would be considered to some to be an act in the mode of passion, or an act, even if you consider that he's doing his duty, that would be an act in the mode of goodness. But it doesn't liberate him from the reactions of what he's doing. However, because Krishna has told him specifically that this is what needs to be done, it becomes an act of transcendence.
So let me just reflect this back, because this is a important point, I feel. So what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I hear you saying is that all activities in ignorance, passion, and goodness, okay, fine, we want to move as much as we can toward goodness, but it's still not perfection, because even acts in the mode of goodness bind us continuously to this world. Right. So we are not free from the reactions of our actions.
Correct.
So if I do something good, I'm still tying myself to receive something good in the future, materially speaking. But transcendental activity, so this action in Vishuddha Sattva, or pure transcendental goodness, is liberating. It frees us from this cycle, because we're acting on a transcendental platform above the three modes.
Right, exactly. So you touched on something there that I don't think we've covered yet, the law of karma.
Yeah.
We need another hour for this, but
yeah. Have we not spoken about the law of karma yet?
I don't think we have. I don't think we have at all.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like a chapter 3 thing, really, isn't it?
Okay. Well, maybe we can come back to it then.
Right. But
unless you want to go into it now, how do you feel, Cintamani?
I think that we should stick to the chapter, because otherwise we won't have anything to talk about next time.
Yeah, yeah. We'll go way over, and we won't talk about the subjects of chapter 2. So let's save that one.
Yeah, let's
karma. It's coming,
put a
guys.
pin in it. It's getting there. Yeah. But in short, actions have reactions, right? And we want to be free from reactions. So how do you do that? You've got to get to this top platform. Just like, and you have to act under divine instruction, spiritual instruction. So it's just like, when we were kids, being the oldest sibling, sometimes I would have to go and, say something to my siblings. My mom would say, oh, tell your sister not to do this or not to do that. And my sister, she doesn't get upset because she knows it's from my mother. But if I go myself and I say, hey, don't do that, she's like, you can't boss me around. Then I get the reaction, you see? So so because we're acting under Krishna's orders, we don't receive the reaction. However, if we act in our own pleasure and our own interests, that's when it becomes subject to the modes, and when we become subject to reactions.
Yeah, Krishna talks about here, he tells Arjuna, he says, you must act, but act without a desire for the results. Do it as an offering to me, to the divine. And that's what transcendental activity is. And he says that's so if we start doing that, then we're pulling ourselves out of these three modes. He actually says to Arjuna, let me pull it up because it's such a powerful verse. Oh, where is it? I saw it and I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm. I think I know the one that you mean, but I don't know the exact wording. I'm gonna let you find it.
I just saw another very cool one. Here we go. He says, you have a right. So this is text 47. So chapter 2, text 47. And Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he says, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. He says, you are not entitled to the fruits of action. So I thought that was a powerful statement. And Krishna is telling Arjuna, he's saying that what you're doing, if you're doing it just to please yourself, then you're acting within the modes of nature. That's automatically acting within the modes of nature, and that's going to be binding you to this world. But if you just change your intention, you might be doing the exact same thing, but you switch up your intention, and you're no longer doing it for the fruits of your actions. You're not doing it for yourself to get the results, but you're simply doing that activity to please Krishna. Then that is what we should be aiming to do. So in fact, we might be doing the exact same thing. Arjuna could have gone into that battle and fought the battle because he wanted to win the kingdom.
Right.
And it might have been, of course, when he was fighting, he would have had to engage in the mode of passion very much. But you're saying there's an element of him doing his worldly duty, so that you could say that also could come with some goodness. But because he was doing it just to please Krishna, he wasn't thinking, I want to win a kingdom, I want this, I want that. He was thinking, what's going to please Krishna? Then the same activity becomes transcendental.
Right. So that brings us to service in Krishna consciousness. A wonderful term.
There was one thing that I think I wanted to mention, and I think it comes just before that.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. So, because we're kind of looking at the first verse of today's half, which is 240, chapter 2, text 40. And it says, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting verse for me, because what it's saying is that in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. So what I understand Krishna to be talking about is that he's saying, when we strive to do spiritual activity, so when we're trying to act in this transcendence mode that you just told us about, anything we do from that place is never lost. So it's like a spiritual bank account that never gets lost.
Right.
And we only accumulate, which means that if we're aiming for our goal of reconnecting with the divine, which is our goal, that's the bhakti-yoga process. Bhakti means loving devotion, and yoga means connection. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to reconnect with the divine through loving devotion. So when we do activities from that place, this place of bhakti yoga, those activities are never lost. It goes into our spiritual bank account and we never lose it. But what it's also implying is that when we act materially, our things do get lost.
Right.
So whatever we are working so hard for in this world, whether it be name, fame, intelligence, wealth, maybe now we're working really hard for a promotion at work, or we're trying to build a business, or we're trying to finish our studies and get a degree or whatever it might be. At the end of the day, I know this sounds sad, but at the end of the day, we lose these things. If not within this life, at the end of this life, things are lost. Mm-hmm. So much so. Now, what I also wanted to bring one other point in here, because I think it's just a really, to me, it's a really logical perspective. And I sometimes think, I've had conversations with people about this subject before, but it brings into the topic this idea of heaven as well, heaven and hell. So just to give a little context, the Vedic perspective talks about the material universe, including heaven and hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what we're trying to do through this process of bhakti yoga is we're trying to go beyond heaven even. Heaven is still considered part of the material world. Now, to me, that makes a lot of sense because, for example, if we live in this world and we're very, very pious people, we do many, many good things, but we're not spiritually inclined, but we're good people. Okay, well, that good activity doesn't go unrewarded to some degree. We can go to heaven. Or if we're very, very bad and we do numerous horrible, vile things in this life, then we'll go to hell. There is a place where we have to receive the reactions of what we've done. There's no action without reaction. But what's never made sense to me is the eternality of those two places. I have one opportunity, and if I screw it up, I'm screwed forever in hell. Versus if I do great, I live eternally on heaven. So these places, it's like it's like going to a resort. So if you go to heaven, for example, it's like you've saved up lots and lots of money, and then you're getting to spend it. But eventually your savings run out, and then you come back to this earth realm. Or contrary, you might go to hell and you have to suffer, but it's not eternal. Eternal damnation has never made sense to me.
Right. Well, that's the premise. I think humanity or people in general, they do understand that there's got to be more to it than that, because there's like, for example, the show The Good Place, when it talks about like, this is basically their whole point, that like it can't just be good and bad and you just end up in the bad place forever or in the good place by mistake or whatever it is. I forget the premise of the show, but basically, this is a recognized issue, that how can it just be heaven, hell, and earth? There's got to be something more than that.
Right. So then this spiritual activities that we do, that's never lost. Whatever we do, even if we do screw up, if we've done anything on the spiritual platform, if we've chanted, if we've given in charity to a temple or a holy place, or if we've respected a holy person, or if we've consciously tried to go a little deep in our spiritual life, even if we then stray and we kind of move away from it all, that is never lost no matter what happens.
Right.
So it only accumulates and it only accumulates and it only accumulates until we escape this samsara. Samsara means this cycle of birth and death. And we go back to the spiritual world. That's the only place that is eternal. And it's Satchit Ananda. It's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So that to me is way more, it makes more sense. Maybe it's more appealing as well. That the only thing that is eternal is where we are going to be eternally connected with the divine. And it's a place of bliss.
It sounds good to me.
So sorry, that was the other thing I wanted to just raise, but we can move into your topic.
No, I was going to say that, I want to add to what you've said, which is wonderful. Nice. But there's also an element of magnification, so like, not only is it that everything that you put in that account is never lost, it also becomes magnified, because Krishna, when he sees someone endeavoring on his behalf, is so grateful and is so happy that he actually, it's said, you take one step to Krishna, he takes 10 steps to you. So it's like he takes whatever tiny thing you do and he grows it into something huge, because he's just so happy. And he's actually like described as the most grateful person. You give him a little bit and he gives everything. So it's this wonderful exchange, and whatever you put it in that account is magnified.
Beautiful point.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's called service in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a term more or less coined by Prabhupada, the author of the book, but it's a very important one, meaning that when we act in Krishna consciousness, we have different glasses on. We're looking at everything and thinking, everything is Krishna's. What can I do for Krishna? Like that. So it becomes, you start to act in your spiritual, what's that term I like so much that you keep saying? Enlightened self-interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything becomes, on this transcendental platform, your consciousness is transformed from regular material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. When we serve in Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution. As
We'll talk, and this is another point that gets clarified even more in chapter 3. Because Arjuna asks a question. Krishna actually ends up confusing Arjuna at the end of this chapter. And then Arjuna has to say, tell me explicitly what you meant. And then he goes more into this activity in Krishna consciousness.
Nice. Yeah. So in order to reach this level of activity, you have to be very, very determined. Krishna says you have to have one pointed intelligence. You have to be focused, and you have to have faith. And faith is quite an interesting word.
Yeah.
Some people think that faith involves just following orders blindly, or acting without any knowledge, just based on trust for a divine entity that you've never seen or interacted with. But faith is actually much more than that. Faith, Prabhupada makes this point, faith is based on knowledge, and faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. Did you want to elaborate on this, Madhva?
I think about this point a fair bit, actually, about faith. So I like that point. He says faith is based on knowledge. So how do we build faith in anything? Is we learn about it. Okay, oh, that starts to make sense. If someone told you, for example, E equals MC squared, go, okay, all right, sure, whatever. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when you study it, when you sit down and you learn and you go through the maths, and then you can see, okay, now I understand. That makes sense. Of course, E equals MC squared. Then you have faith because you've studied, you understand, you've got knowledge. So in a similar way, with spiritual knowledge, as you start to hear spiritual knowledge, as your knowledge increases, so does your faith increase. But this for me is, faith is interesting. I feel like everything is based on faith in this world. If you've ever just sat and really pondered the world, from trying to make sense of it, even science is based on faith. I think science is the new religion, because what's interesting, though, is that it's sold as fact. Big Bang, fact. No, it's theory. Evolution, fact. No, it's also theory. But it's based on some level of faith. So based on what they can see, based on what they can deduct from what they can see, they decide, oh, well, we believe this must be the truth. And that's for those who have done the research. And then for the general population, people seem to take it as fact, but they're also just having faith in the scientists who have done the work. They put their faith in someone and say what they've done is correct and what they're telling us is true. Whereas we're choosing to put our faith in someone else. Faith is so necessary because we can't understand everything. And sometimes I've heard this in the past, and sometimes it kind of grates on me, this answer. Well, you don't understand everything, so you need faith sometimes. And I'm like, well, I don't really like that answer, you know, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. When I reflect on it, there's so much that I don't know. And if I don't just want to swim in a pool of being lost in my own mind, then I have faith based on what I do understand. So much of this philosophy makes so much sense. It makes so much sense to me, at least. And then I see people, part of our faith is also built off other people, role models who we see, and we see this person is living the life. They're living what I want to achieve, and they're doing it through this process. That also gives us faith. So we place our faith, just depends where we choose to place our faith and why. So I have so much faith in this. I wouldn't say 100% faith, because that would be a lie for me where I'm at. But I have enough faith to say, this is where I want to focus my energy, focus my attention, so that I can get to 100% faith.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. And faith is a really long road, as you were saying. Like we believe, and then there's things that are still like, today it was, just this morning, not yesterday. Today, I was talking to this girl on Instagram. She was like, "Are you a devotee of Krishna?" And she started like asking me like, "Oh, so many bad things have happened to me, and I used to believe in Krishna, and now I don't have any faith." And at first she was asking nicely, like in kind of a sad way, like, "Why do these things happen?" And I told her that, look, I don't know everything, but I do know that our experiences are meant to teach us. So I was going on like that. But I did feel sorry, and I felt inclined towards her, like empathetically, because she was really sad. So I was, and it also happened that just this morning I had my own little like freak out, when I was just like, Krishna, why, and it was just so like just one of those moments when you're just like, I'm just gonna sleep today. I don't know why I have to do anything. Like, why should I? And it was funny because just a few hours later, Krishna was like, here's something to do. You have to cheer up this girl. She's worse off than you. And then so back to the point. She was like, how can you? She became angry, like not angry, but her real question came out, like, how can you believe blindly, that Krishna cares about you? And I was like, hey, I became like, excuse me, like, it's not a blind faith, I felt it, and I was like, no, you will know, he'll show you, all these things come through one way or another. And then I shocked myself, because I was like, oh, I believe something. Like when it was like somebody came to poke and test, then I was like, hey,
It's not blind faith. Sometimes people think religion is blind faith.
Yeah.
But this is why I say everyone has faith. You ask someone about science, it's also blind faith. There's a really interesting video. There's a really interesting video where I think he must be Christian, the man, but there's a man who goes to a university where it's one of the leading universities in the field of science, and in the field of science, I don't know where it is, but it's on YouTube, and he's talking about evolution, and he goes and he's standing behind the mic. You don't see who he is, but he just puts the mic in front of all of these so-called leading scientists, and he's saying, is there any evidence of change of kind? So because in science, there's this example of the Galapagos birds and how they evolve with their beaks changing in order to be able to feed through the small holes on the island of Galapagos. Right? You've heard that story? It's a very, very famous scientific, so-called scientific evidence for evolution. The Galapagos birds. Okay? But it's one bird, apparently this is what happens, one bird who evolved whose beak changed. But there's zero evidence for a change of kind, which means, for example, a fish turning into a mammal, or a bird turning into a mammal, or turning into a different kind. There's 12 kinds of species. Okay? So forgive me because my science is clearly not very advanced, but you're hopefully getting the point here. And so he's taking the mic and he's saying to them, can you give me an example of change of kind? And he puts it in front of them. And every single one of them goes, the Galapagos birds. And he goes, that's not a change of kind. That's just one bird changing slightly, but it's still a bird. Can you give me an example of a change of kind? He puts the mic in front of them. And they're all just stumped. Because there's no evidence. So they take it on faith. But you know what? In fact, I feel like this, not everyone, because an honest person will say, at least if they believe in science, that they have to assume the position of being agnostic, because you don't know. Fine, you believe in science. I get it. That's okay. But when you say this is fact, it's not fact. This is your belief. You believe that based off what you can see. It's actually faith as well. So it's just, where do we choose to place our faith? I wrote something about this a while ago. Why do I choose to place my faith in Krishna?
I think I saw that.
Yeah. And it's because my life experiences, the people that I've seen in this philosophy and the life that they live, the philosophy itself makes so much sense, enough sense that for the things that don't make sense, I'm willing to accept I haven't understood them properly yet. Mm-hmm. And I fall back on my experiences. I said in that post, I said, it would be rude of me almost. It would be ungrateful of me to say that I haven't felt Krishna's presence in my life.
100%.
If I were to say that, that would be I would feel me being ungrateful. So I have faith, and it's not 100% faith. If it was, I probably would do a lot more than I do in my spiritual life. But there's enough faith based on what I've experienced and done and read and seen. There's truth here. There is truth here without doubt. Then it's just up to us to go deeper.
Yes.
Okay, I'm aware of time, so.
Oh, goodness me.
I'm aware of time, I know. There was a few other verses here that I wanted to touch on. Was there anything else you wanted to raise, Cintamani, that you felt was really important that should come out of this half of chapter 2?
Yeah, but I didn't imagine that we'd have so little time.
One thing, time flies when you're having fun. Yes.
Yes.
So, the eternal soul. Oh, nice. Thanks, Kirtan London / Ananda, I believe.
What's that?
I think Ananda was saying one point. I'm assuming that was one point that she was taking away from this part of the Gita, the eternal soul.
Oh, okay.
So, sorry, you know what? I had a train of thought, but I've just lost it, so I'm going to pass it back to you.
We might need to do a part 3 of chapter 2, I'm thinking.
Okay.
But yeah, so let me think quickly.
Okay, I actually have a point here. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
You're just looking at us fumbling around with ourselves here.
We're like trying to figure out what to cram in. Okay, go ahead.
So, Krishna explains to Arjuna that he should be acting in this transcendental space, right? Act for my pleasure. Don't act for your own sense gratification. And he goes into a little detail about explanation as to why that is. Don't act for your own sense gratification. He says, the less intelligent behave just for their own sense gratification, unaware that this is not going to bring them happiness. Because the intelligent person acts in Krishna consciousness, because they understand this is what's going to make them happy, right? And remember, Krishna, the context of this is Krishna's trying to tell Arjuna, he's explaining to Arjuna why he should fight. So then Arjuna responds and he asks Krishna a question. And one nice thing to note here, because let me just read the verse, what Arjuna says.
Can I interject for a second? Because I just remembered something.
Yeah, please.
When you say that, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna that this will make him happy ultimately. The analogy comes to mind of the person watering the roots of the tree, and then the tree is
that
satisfied.
is actually mentioned as well. Yeah.
Whereas so basically Arjuna is being asked to not act in his own individual interest, but on this higher platform of spiritual interest and the desire of Krishna. And it's compared to a person watering every individual leaf of a tree as opposed to watering the root of the tree.
Right.
So basically, if you water every individual root, or you take care of the individual interest of every single person, that tree dies. But if you care for the root, who is Krishna, source, then you are able to nourish the whole society, the world, yourself, Krishna. Everyone's happy.
Beautiful. I love that point. Okay.
Sorry.
Shall I continue?
Please do.
Okay. We can probably, anyway, let's see how we get on. I was thinking we could try and wrap it up soonish as well, because I think the hour for talking is quite nice,
Yeah, an hour is good.
Okay, so here, text 54. So chapter 2, text 54. So after Krishna has explained to Arjuna that he should be acting in Krishna consciousness, not in material consciousness, Arjuna asks him, he says, "Oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence?" So like you were saying before, Cintamani. "How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?" So, and because I was listening to a really nice lecture about this today, and the speaker was sharing and saying, remember that the Gita is poetry. Gita actually means song. And so when Arjuna is asking Krishna, how does he speak and how does he walk? He doesn't mean what language does he speak, or does he walk with a strong gait, or does he walk like a cat walk or something like that,
Yeah.
He's saying the poetry there is, how does he engage with the world? How does he sit? When does he retract from the world? Basically, what are the behaviors and the qualities of this person who is transcendentally situated? Because Arjuna is also thinking, well, are you trying to get me to fight here? Because surely a transcendentally situated person wouldn't fight, no? So there's also some subtle thinking like that going on for Arjuna.
Nice.
So then Krishna goes on to answer that. And he starts to give all these verses about how this person is not affected by the threefold miseries. They're not affected by happiness or distress, attachment, fear, anger. They have a steady mind. So there's a great one. If we're affected by happiness or distress or fear or anger, probably not on that transcendental platform quite yet.
Not yet. Did you want to explain about the threefold miseries? I think that's pertinent.
Can?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on a minute. Well, let me just read from this section then. So give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually don't know much about the Threefold Miseries off the top of my head. Do you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't even make notes on it. I just, when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, Threefold Miseries.
Yeah, okay, here they are. I know what they are.
Go ahead.
So there's fear. So hold on a minute. One is the miseries of things related to your past. One is miseries of things related to your present. And one is miseries of things relating to your future. I think I've got that right.
Are you sure?
I'm not 100%.
I think that's a different. The thing that I remember is that the threefold miseries are miseries caused by sort of like nature and higher powers. So
Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
is that the one?
Yeah. Adi Devika, Adi.
Oh yeah, Adibhotik, Adhyatmik, Adidevik.
There we go.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Right. So there's Adidevik miseries, which are miseries caused by higher powers or higher entities such as planets, so like bad astrology, things like that.
Or
And then
even
there's
things like
also,
earthquakes, tsunamis.
right, so natural disasters,
Yeah.
you know, the weather, all these things are caused by higher powers, or Adidevik. And then there's Adibhotik, which is like other living entities, so family, friends, you know, enemies, all these kind of people can cause you distress. And then there's Adhyatmik, which is the mind, so depression, anxiety, fear, you know, mental disorder, all these types of things. So those are the three categories that any sort of misery will fall under.
Thank you, Cintamani. So then Krishna goes on to give more explanation. He goes into this whole description of the qualities of a transcendental person.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots of good qualities, basically. Lots and lots. So they're not afraid. They're completely self-satisfied. They're caring. They're empathetic. All of these good qualities that he goes into, and this is towards the end of chapter 2.
Yes. Yes, this person having put their Krishna consciousness glasses on, so to speak, they are detached from their senses, from you know, they're not interested in their own self-interest. They think higher than that. They see the bigger picture. They're and then because they're thinking like that, then they're happy and they're satisfied within themselves. So it's quite a nice state to be in. And yes.
Okay, I think we should try and wrap it up here, but I don't know if you had
Let's,
anything else that you wanted to share before we do, or if there's any
I think that we can't share more without going into other topics. And if we go into other topics, then we'll use more time.
Yeah, exactly. Each thing is it can go into a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so unless there's anyone here who had any thoughts, questions,
Anything
that
at all
they'd like to put forward before we wrap up this conversation and pass it over to Cintamani to see us out with a bit of kirtan.
Mm-hmm. Let me set that up.
Okay, nice. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. All right. Kirtan. So let me do the sound thing. Good. So a quick little mantra for you. Is it sounding okay still?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
And if I play the guitar, is that all right?
We can hear it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, this mantra is quite famous among people who are interested in spirituality and yoga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's a cry to the divine living within our hearts. And I like this mantra because it reminds me that I'm not alone. And yeah, without over explaining it, that's what I love about it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Oh, Madhva, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was on mute. You could make an album just with that.
Thank you.
Wow. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cintamani, for going through this second half of chapter 2. There's so much, really. There's so much that gets missed. You know, again, I just want to say, I hope if any of this resonates with anyone listening, then perhaps what it could do is inspire you to read the book itself, because there's so much. You can discuss this book sentence by sentence. Yeah. People do. My parents do. They discuss it sentence by sentence on a daily basis.
Every day. Mm-hmm.
So it's so hard to try and pull out all of the juice, all of those juicy wisdom bites that are there within the text, and put it into one short podcast. Even if we do it over 2 sessions for one chapter, it's still hard. But if you like any of this, and if any of it resonates and makes sense, then please do go out and buy the book for yourself and read it. There's so much there that will help change your life for the better.
Absolutely.
Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's stuck with us this whole time.
Thank you for being here, guys. Really. If there, before we wrap up, did anyone have any thoughts or questions? Probably don't. But if you did, one of the reasons we do it on Zoom is so that we can open it up for more open discussion as well. So it's like a hybrid between a podcast and a reading group in that sense.
Or if anything comes to you, you can also email us, but I forget the email address. Maybe Kirtan London, maybe you could put it.
journeytojoy@kirtanlondon.com.
There you go.
journeytojoy@kirtanlondon.com. There we go. Nanda's put it in the comment section. So if you do want to read it with us and then join us in 2 weeks again, or on the second Wednesday of April. No, hold on a minute. Let's just say in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Okay, I think that's easier to say. So in 2 weeks, we'll be back here again, and we'll be looking at chapter 3. I think probably the first half of chapter 3. Let's see.
But there's still more of chapter 2.
Okay.
So probably...
What else was there? Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll have a look, and then we'll put it out there. But the point is what we want to do is to slowly, hopefully, cultivate a group of people who want to do the same thing. So if you have friends who you know could benefit from this, who could benefit from listening to these discussions, invite them, bring them in. And we can create a community of people who want to go deeper, who want to get to know this book just that little bit better. And don't be shy. Open it up for conversation. Drop your questions in the comment box, and we'll make this as engaging as we can as well. That's the hope, that this will cultivate and grow in that way. And Ananda is always so helpful. She's telling, so she's put the comment, the email in the comment section. It's also every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And the next one is now the 14th of April.
Yes.
That's the next one.
All right.
So it was a pleasure, and we will see you all at the next one.
Take care.
All right, guys. Take care.